One of the things I'd like to demystify about our brand process is our BrandScape process. Our BrandScape process basically provides the visual aesthetic for a brand. I'd like to take you through a specific example. This particular one, this client came to us with a logo and a product package design already made. Sometimes these clients come to us with assets that exist. Sometimes they are completely being started from the ground up, where we even help them come up with a name for their product or their business. But this is probably a more typical case where we have some brand assets to start with. So what you can see here on my desktop is the packaging design that the client had. And they were working with a manufacturer for this new immunity supplement called Dr. Dzik. The DZEC was an acronym for vitamin D, zinc, elderberry, and vitamin C. So when we work with clients, they'll give us these assets and we'll kind of collect those, bank those into an assets folder and keep those on hand. And then when we go into the kickoff part of the project, we'll go through a project brief. And what that basically looks like is a questionnaire. And we will take them through a variety of questions and start to get to learn a little bit more about their business. A key part of this project brief is actually the brand personality section. And in this section, we'll often ask questions like, if you were to describe your business as a person, what 3 or 4 characteristics might you use to describe them? If you were introducing them to someone, how might you introduce them as a person? And then we'll ask them about some brands that may inspire them. And these don't have to be brands that are in the same vertical or sell a similar product, just brands that they feel like have a great vibe and vibe that might be fitting for what they're trying to do with their new brand. The key part of this is the business personality scale. And in this scale, we'll ask them to give us a number on a scale of 1 to 10. And whereas the 1 is one side of a particular scale, in this case, let's look at the first one. If 1 is young and 10 is mature, where do you think your brand should sit? And this one had given us a number of 6.5. And then we continue to do that throughout the rest of these questions. What I'm really looking for here when we take them through this process is the outliers. So I'm looking at the higher numbers, the 8.5s, the 8s. The 5s and the 6s and even the 4s aren't as indicative to me. They're kind of in the middle of the road, so it's not giving me a lot of information. But here I really noted that they said an 8.5 bold. And I asked them about that at the time. I said, "Oh, you really want to be bold?" And I asked them if they thought that their package design felt like an 8.5 bold. And they did think that, which is interesting because when I look at that, it feels very pharmaceutical, almost, sterile. It kind of feels like a prescription bottle a little bit, to be quite honest. And I think it looks a bit boring. So I kind of keep that thought, I bank that thought, and we continue to move forward with the brief. Another thing that they also said was an 8 on the trendy scale. If 1 is traditional and 10 is trendy, they gave me an 8. Same thing there, looking at the package design, to me, that feels much more traditional than trendy. So I'm starting to see some misalignments there. And that's the purpose of these exercises, is to get them to step outside of the assets they already have or the projects that they've already completed and just look at things logically and analytically. And then we, as brand strategists, will help them to build the emotion, the appropriate emotion into the vibe that they want to have or the tone they want to have in their brand. One of the other interesting questions that we'll ask in these project briefs is if they could name a personality or a celebrity that might embody the brand. And I'll often tell them, if budget was no question, we had unlimited money, who might we choose? Any personality. And it can be alive or dead or fictional. I often tell them they can choose Jesus if they want. They could choose Batman. So this one in particular, they named Tiger Woods. That's the one that's the most bold there. And that was because of the way he reinvented himself, and he was known for taking care of his body. So, and Tiger Woods is an interesting person here as well. I know he can be a bit polarizing with his marital situation and everything like that, but we're just looking at his personality. And through a longer discussion about Tiger, the reason they chose him was because he was such a trailblazer in his sport at the time. And obviously he was known as kind of a rock star in the world of golf. So that kind of speaks back to that trendiness and boldness again. So that's all really good information. And from there, what we'll do is we'll kick off our BrandScape process, which starts with an image hunt. And we usually have a kickoff meeting with the creative team, and I'll download them on the project brief. I'll have them read through all of it. We usually do a brand script before we get to the BrandScapes as well. And if we have that, I'll have them review that and read that as well, because that helps set the story and the types of phrasing and language that the brand is going to use, which is, a key part to the brand strategy as well. But with that, they'll basically go on an image hunt. But for example, some of the designers were looking for patterns. They'll look for things like packaging designs and start to look for graphics that kind of match that personality scale. All right. And while they're doing that, in this case, a lot of times we'll do a SWOT analysis as well, where we'll look at competitors, do a competitor analysis, and then do a SWOT at the end of it, which if you haven't had one of those or heard of that, the SWOT is an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And these are pretty long reports. They're usually about 100 pages. This one is right on the nose with 100 pages. I mean, you can see we're looking at competitors in the space who make a similar product. In this case, Nature's Made, which is a major, national brand. And we'll look at how they're marketing themselves, what's their brand strategy like, et cetera, et cetera. And we usually look at anywhere from 6 to 10 key competitors that we identify in our discovery process. And then the reason we do that is so that we can help our client position themselves in the marketplace in a unique way. And if we see weaknesses or particular openings, which would be the opportunities part of the SWOT, we will counsel them on that and then let them make a decision armed with that knowledge. So that's a key part of that process. And then after the designers feel comfortable with the examples that they found, and we'll start to collect those into piles and build out themes from there. And once we have 3 to 5 themes that we're seeing come to life, we'll go ahead and start the BrandScape process. And what BrandScapes are basically is just a mood board. I usually refer to it as a mood board on steroids. It's a more elaborate, fleshed out mood board. And in the BrandScapes, we'll look at things such as layout, obviously layout style, color palette, font style or typography. If you're a designer, you know what that term means. We'll also look at photo treatments. We'll look at graphic language. So what types of graphics does it use? Illustration style, all those types of things, and then how all of that comes together visually. And in this case, we have 3 BrandScapes here. That's usually what we'll present. This first BrandScape along the top here, with a client like this, where they have an asset like the packaging already completed, or what they think is completed, they're happy with it. We will usually design one BrandScape that just is meant to serve as an evolution or a further development of their existing assets. And in this case, we were really trying to leverage the color palette was really important for them, the orange and the purple. And when we brought in some secondary colors with a sort of a magenta red and then a soft gray. And we usually work left to right. We'll usually place the logos in the left as sort of one bookend, and then work our way through. On this one, you're seeing the package design there as it was given to us. And we started to work on elements that might support that graphic language that already exists. In this particular case, we brought in this framing element with the plus symbol that was pulled from the package design. And then as we move across, we'll look at things such as mock ad designs and how some of those graphics might work in there. So you're seeing that frame being used and as it wraps around the nurses or the EMT's face there. We'll also look at interior spaces and exterior spaces as well. So we want to think about the physical, how the brand will manifest in a physical space. You're seeing some patterns in there below the ad where we're, in this case, bringing in the colors, bringing in a sort of a scientific, DNA inspired pattern as well. And then moving to the right a bit further, we're seeing some of the type locked up, which is just a term for where we bring elements together and sort of make a little mini layout. So you're seeing the font choices as they work together with a little bit of user interface elements. In this case, a learn more button, um, icon design as well. So what sort of graphic, illustration might work well with this particular design. And then we usually like to work what we call a hero shot in towards the end of the Brand-Scape, which kind of bookends the other side. And in this case, we have a flight attendant, and she's looking really confident. And then alongside the language of protecting those who protect you. And then the last little piece, there's a bit of printed business cards. So we like to look at print as well in a lot of these. And it's important to note too that when this product came out, COVID was kind of just ramping up. So, a big part of this was this reassurance message for people who are around lots of people, performing their jobs. So EMTs and flight attendants and teachers and doctors and nurses and all those types of people who are sort of in harm's way. That was kind of the way we were positioning this brand. The second BrandScape brings in a bit more color. So you'll see along with the orange and purple, we've brought, again, the magenta in along with sort of a pale yellow and a turquoise blue. And again, the packaging is there on the left with some of the graphics from the packaging. And we're seeing some of that language pulled in from our brand script. So some tongue-in-cheek language there with the flatline viruses today. Again, user interface elements with buttons, more icons and graphics and type. And moving to the right, some more printed materials or just graphics that could be used on a website. For example, how we might present information using color bands, etc. And in this one, we started to get into different, I mentioned photography treatment. This one has photography where the people are clipped out, so there's no background, and that allows us to put them on flat color, and that creates kind of a lively, modern, fun vibe as well. And then moving to the right, and we're starting to work some of the packaging in with the graphics and the type. You see an interior space there, and then in the end, the right side here, we see the hero graphic, in this case, a teacher, and we pulled that shield graphic in from the package, and we're using that like as a proverbial shield that's protecting this teacher from the viruses that are in the room, with being exposed to all these people, all these children, and the confidence inspiring message of get back to life stat. So tying back into that medical language from the brand script. And then the last BrandScape that we presented was sort of a bigger swing. We usually try to take a mild to wild approach, whereas the first BrandScape was, like I said, a bit of an evolution. That's kind of our safer play. And then we get a little bit spicier as we go. And this one was definitely meant to be a bigger swing and to address the brand personality scale where they said 8.5 bold and 8 on the trendy scale. So we went a little bit harder on this one with the design with big, bold typography where we've pulled out the DZIC acronym out into the graphic of a hospital scene there, and then the whole get back to life stat message with a big bold bottle and lots of big, color blocks, chunky, bold, lots of contrast in the color. That's, a nice way to work in that. When I hear a client say things like bold, it's usually bigger graphics, more contrast, less subtlety, obviously. And then the hero shot on this one features a fireman. So we're working in different types of people that are kind of on the front line, and you're seeing that message that reiterates that the front line for the front line. So speaking to like the tools that the pros use. And this very much was the professional grade sort of angle that we were going for. And when we presented these, I never know, what the client's what's gonna resonate with them. I usually know that the safe road is going to be somewhat of a hit, and that's why we start with that, and then we progressively kind of get into more graphics that push the envelope a little bit. And I try to let the creative team do what they're going to do, and I just provide some guardrails to help steer them in a direction that I think the client will be comfortable with. And in this case, and in many cases, the client actually ended up with the third board, the most bold, spiciest option. So that's not uncommon, and that's a big reason why we do this process, because This client came to us with that packaging and they said, their words were, our logo's done, our packaging's done, we're very happy with it. And then as we go through our discovery process, I start to learn a few things about the direction they're trying to go. And obviously, they don't understand. They're not experts in marketing or brand strategy. That's not what they do. They know their business, they know their product. So we very much take a collaborative, team centric approach to working with our clients so that we're leaning on them for that expertise of their product and business. And then they can lean on us for our expertise on the marketing and brand side. So they ended up choosing board 3 with a few revisions, and the final Brand-Scape ended up like this. So it definitely went through a little bit of refinement. One of the things that we did that they really liked was actually creating a visual for the DZIC acronym and spelling that out quite literally. So the client, the customer understands what DZIC comes from. You're seeing that strong color blocking in here. And then we're working in tones of the colors as well. So even though there's really just purple and orange, we have black and white, and then we're using shades of the orange and purple as well to give us even some supporting colors on top of those. And the client really liked the sort of social media inspired graphics where you see the nurse putting on the gloves and it says feel safe when life demands bravery. And then the teacher there and his message is feel safe when life demands dedication. And then it's bookend with the flight attendant on the end. It says feel safe when life demands risk. So very potent messaging, again, pulled from our BrandScape process. The client really loved that. They really were feeling the right emotions around that. And that's a big part of how I try to counsel clients on brand strategy is, we want people to feel the right emotions. And then the graphic in the middle there, obviously that is not their packaging. And the reason why it's not their packaging is we wanted to bring in examples of packaging that in our mind is bold. So this was, I think, a kombucha tea or something. But the reason we brought that in is to just show them what bold packaging would look like or could look like, and just open up that conversation to, do we want to revisit the packaging design? Because now's the time. At that time, they didn't have anything printed, they didn't have anything bottled, and there was time to revisit that and possibly do something else. So, and this client, they ultimately ended up deciding to do that, and I'll show you here what the final product looked like. So as you can see here, we've got the original product on the left here, and then this is what the final product will look like on the right. And this was a 2-part product. It was a daily immune support gummy, and then they have their rescue formula, which was for when you were getting sick, you had symptoms and you need to punch that cold out quickly, and the rescue formula would do that for you in about a week's time. So nice 1-2 punch, and it gave us an opportunity to alternate the color scheme a little bit, where the daily gummy was mainly a purple base color, which went with the gummies, which were purple themselves, and then the rescue formula flipped it and made it more orange, which works really well. They play well together, and it makes a very striking visual combination. So, and another nice little touch that we did with this project as well is through the BrandScape, we found that we could probably fine tune that logo a little bit as well, while still keeping its original essence. This was definitely more of an evolution than a revolution. But you can see here the original logo, the Dr. DZIC logo design, and then the shield design and our development of that. So the Dr. DZIC logo itself, we just kind of bodied up that type a little bit. Again, trying to get more of that boldness in there and just cleaned the design up a bit. And then on the shield, we actually modified it a little bit so it resembles not only a shield, but also a safety mask, which, as you will probably remember, that was a big part of COVID at the time, and just a big part of just, being safe and having a brand that's more doctor centric. So that shows a nice evolution of the logo and the shield design, and along with the other the assets. So I hope that helps kind of explain what brandscapes are and how they work. It's obviously one of the most visual parts of the process when we're working with brand strategy with a client, and our clients usually really love the process. We usually start with the brand script process where we develop the brand story and the language for the brand and what we call concept messages, which were some of those phrases you saw in the brandscapes. And the clients, that usually kind of warms them up. They usually start to really enjoy thinking creatively and working alongside of our team. And then when we get to the BrandScape process, that's usually clients really love that part. They love to see it come together visually. And once we do that, then we can start to develop the other assets. And that's where you get a website that looks like this, and you can see where it's clearly pulling its design language from the BrandScapes, and with the strong introduction there, which this had a looping video, and then infographics showing the 1-2 combination of the products. We have the creator of the product here featured strongly as a bit of a validation, and then the satisfaction guaranteed, and then we brought in some more of that feel safe language at home, at work, etc. So it kind of shows you the linear progression of from our project brief and breaking things down analytically, and then allowing our creative team to take that information and develop a brand aesthetic that's appropriate for the product or service. So I think this just does a really nice job to illustrate the power of the BrandScape. And it's also important to note that when we go through that process, both the brand script and the BrandScape, it really creates an economy of scale as we move forward and develop new things like logos and website design and printed materials and brochures or video production, et cetera, because now we don't have to design multiple concepts to present. We already have the look and feel, we already have the voice, we already have the language. So instead of presenting a mild to wild option for every deliverable moving forward, like we did on the BrandScape, we've already done that work. So now we have that foundation set. So as we move forward developing new assets for a brand, everything becomes much more efficient. And we usually find it's anywhere from 20 to 40% of a time savings, which ends up being a cost savings. So, if you're getting into, where you're developing a brand or building a brand from the ground up, these are really key foundational pieces that I almost always highly recommend, just for the economy of scale portion of it. They end up paying for themselves within a few projects. So kind of becomes a no-brainer in that sense. So if you have any questions about the Brandwell process or BrandScapes or BrandScripts for that matter, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to talk about it. Thanks.